During the Memorial Day holiday, I tried to save a child having a heart attack. As a medical student, I acted out of the goodness of my heart. But after the rescue failed, the child's mother sued me for a massive settlement. I refused to pay, and my entire family was doxxed and harassed online. My parents lost their jobs and eventually chose to end their lives by jumping from a building. Before he died, my father decided to donate his organs. I never expected the recipient to be the very woman who drove my parents to their deaths. She begged me to transplant the organs into her husband, promising she would clear my name online. I agreed, but the woman immediately turned on me and took back her word. The harassment only got worse. Eventually, I jumped from the same roof my parents did. But when I opened my eyes again, I was back on the bus on the first day of the holiday. The sudden screech of brakes sent a jolt through the bus. The momentum slammed me hard against the back of the seat in front of me. I woke up gasping, staring at the familiar scene in a daze. After a moment of shock, I fumbled for my phone in my pocket. May 24, 2024. I had been reborn. I was back at the exact moment before I tried to save that little girl. A second later, the mother's frantic screams pierced the air. Skylar! Skylar, what's wrong? Someone help me. Please save my baby. She has a heart condition. My instincts as a medical student made me start to stand up. But a split second later, I forced myself to sit back down. I remembered my past life. I had fought so hard to save that little girl. When the rescue failed, her mother turned into a monster and demanded a huge payout. She told everyone I was the one who killed her daughter. She claimed that if a professional doctor had been there, Skylar wouldn't have died. But this bus was currently on a remote mountain road. An ambulance wouldn't be able to reach us for a long time. In my last life, she insisted I was the murderer. Fine. This time, I'm not lifting a finger. I crossed my arms and stared out the window with total indifference. The driver pulled over because of the emergency. A girl behind me stood up and said, "Ma'am, I'm a student. I can try. Get her off the bus first." The mother, Brenda Vance, thanked her profusely. She grabbed the child and rushed outside. The other passengers followed them to watch the drama unfold. Just before the student started her attempt, I grabbed her arm. "Check for a pulse before you do anything," I whispered. She gave me a suspicious look, but she listened. Brenda's face was covered in tears and desperation. The crowd held their breath, watching the little girl. Skylar's eyes were tightly shut, and her face was ghostly pale. Her tiny, frail body looked heartbreakingly fragile. After a quick check, the student looked up at the crowd. "She doesn't have a heartbeat," she announced. This result was exactly what I expected. Before I died in my last life, I found out Skylar was already dead before I ever touched her. But during the rescue, the scene had been pure chaos. People were shouting and filming. Brenda was wailing and even dropped to her knees to beg me. "She's so young. Please, doctor, she's my whole life. I'll thank you forever. God will bless you." I was just an undergraduate student back then. Saving people was a reflex for me. In that high-pressure environment, I couldn't think straight. I only had one thought. Save her. I have to save her. I didn't take the time to properly check her status. I just started chest compressions like a woman possessed. I pushed with everything I had over and over, until my hands went numb. Only when I realized it was hopeless did I collapse on the ground. I never imagined I was performing CPR on a corpse from the very beginning. I didn't learn the truth until it was too late. I died with that resentment burning in my soul. I warned this girl because I wanted to help her. I didn't want her to be manipulated and ruined like I was. When the girl announced the result, Brenda stumbled back. She collapsed, looking like a mother destroyed by grief. Passengers rushed to support her. Then Brenda threw herself onto the ground in front of the student. "There has to be another way, right? Please try something. Bring her back." The student didn't give up. Even though there was no pulse, she started compressions just like I had. I tapped her on the shoulder. "It's no use. Just stop." Tears streamed down her face. As a fellow med student, I understood her frustration and guilt. Suddenly, Brenda lunged at me like a wild animal. She shoved me so hard I hit the dirt. "This is your fault," she screamed, her eyes bloodshot. "You stopped her. You wasted precious time talking. That's why my daughter is gone." The accusations started instantly. The bystanders began whispering as if I really had killed the girl. But they were just spectators who hadn't lifted a finger. Even now, not a single one of them had called 911. I let out a cold laugh. "The child was dead long ago. You all heard her say it. Why are you pinning this on me?" Brenda's aggressive energy vanished the moment I spoke. She looked down, appearing slightly guilty. In the middle of the crowd, the girl performing CPR stopped. She curled into a ball on the ground, trembling. She probably realized that after 20 minutes of compressions, there was no hope. Brenda seemed to realize her plan was shifting. She crawled over to Skylar and hugged the small, cold body tightly. Then, she grabbed the student's shirt and started raining blows on her. The student didn't even try to dodge. She just kept whispering that she was sorry. It wasn't her fault at all. But she was currently drowning in guilt and self-loathing. She looked about my age, clearly inexperienced with death. Brenda didn't deserve a single ounce of her remorse. The girl had tried her best, and Brenda was beating her for it. Seeing this was like watching my past self. Fury boiled in my chest, and I marched forward to pull Brenda off her. "Get used to it," I told the student. "You did what you could." Brenda heard me and turned her venom back toward me. "Get used to it? This was a human life. You people say you tried your best while you destroy a family." In my last life, Brenda said the exact same thing to me. But in the end, the family that got destroyed was mine. Some people in the crowd were already holding up their phones to record. Brenda saw the flashes and screamed, "Stop filming. My baby is dead. What are you doing?" She quickly gathered Skylar's body, preparing to leave. "Skylar, Mommy's taking you home." Her voice was low, but everyone heard it. The crowd parted to let her through. That's when I stepped forward and blocked her path. Suddenly, I was the center of everyone's attention. "You aren't going anywhere." In my previous life, Brenda took Skylar away immediately and had her cremated. By the time I tried to prove Skylar's death had nothing to do with me, the evidence was gone. Now that body was the only proof I had. Seeing her plan being blocked, Brenda flew into a rage. She set the body down and lunged at me with her claws out. "Who do you think you are? Let us through." Before she could reach me, my father stepped in front of me. He blocked Brenda, making sure she couldn't touch a hair on my head. My dad was a tall man. Brenda was no match for him in terms of size or strength. She could only scream insults at me from behind his back. Looking at my father's broad shoulders, my nose tingled with tears. He had always protected me in our home like this. After we were harassed online, he never let my mom or me leave the house. He handled everything, and he often came home with bruises from protesters. Our address had been leaked, and people spray-painted slurs on our door. He would go out late at night while we were sleeping to scrub the paint off. He didn't want us to see the hate and feel the pain. Tears finally rolled down my face. My mom hugged me tight. "It's okay, honey. Don't be afraid. We're right here." Even though she didn't know the whole story, she chose to believe me. She was always my rock. My mother looked soft and gentle, but she was incredibly strong. In my last life, when they both lost their jobs, she never complained. She just pulled out all our savings and calculated how long we could survive. They were my ultimate support system, always standing by me. But those two beautiful souls couldn't survive the rumors and the constant harassment. My father's back had eventually bent under the weight of the shame. My mother had fallen ill, and her hair turned white overnight from the stress. It broke my heart that I couldn't save them. The morning they died, they made me my favorite breakfast. They told me they were going grocery shopping and told me to stay inside. I didn't know it was a final goodbye. They were probably too afraid of the pain of parting to tell me the truth. Now that I have them back, it feels like a miracle. I sobbed in my mother's arms for a long time before I finally calmed down. They were such good people. Even after everything, my dad left a note saying he wanted to donate his organs. I never expected to see Brenda again after they were gone. She had come to me crying, saying her husband needed corneas. I already lost my daughter. I can't lose my husband too. I was naive enough to give her my father's corneas. I only had one condition. I asked her to tell the truth online and clear my parents' names. I wanted them to rest in peace. Brenda had agreed so easily. But I was a fool to think a person like her could ever change. She took the corneas and then claimed I had blackmailed her into staying quiet. "You killed my daughter. You owe me. I want $70,000, not a penny less." Even though I didn't perform CPR this time, Brenda still targeted me. She demanded a massive settlement right there. My family's stance was firm. This had nothing to do with us, and we weren't paying. Brenda wouldn't let go of my sleeve. Eventually, we were forced to go to the hospital with her. In the hospital morgue, Brenda laid Skylar on a table and started taking photos. She had stopped the bystanders from filming earlier. Now she assumed no one else had any evidence. "I'm posting this online," she hissed. "I'll let the world judge you." She wanted to use the internet to crush us for money again. People like her are rotten to the core. They never change, no matter how many lives they live. Suddenly, a man pushed open the door to the morgue. Brenda rushed to him. "Frank, these are the people who killed our Skylar." Frank Vance gave us a nasty look and immediately brought up money. There wasn't a hint of grief for his dead daughter. I noticed something then. His eyes were perfectly fine. In my last life, Brenda said the corneas were for her husband. So who was she actually helping? Brenda posted the video and started a screaming match with us in the morgue. We only managed to escape when the hospital security intervened. Once we were out, I told my parents to go back to their hometown. I knew what was coming. Within 30 minutes, my phone was blowing up with notifications. The internet was exploding just like before. I didn't want my parents to suffer through that nightmare again. I believed I could handle it this time. Once the truth was out, I would bring them back. They wanted to visit my grandparents anyway, so they didn't ask questions. They just told me to be careful and left. With them safe, I watched my unread messages hit 99 plus. Let the storm come. Brenda was the one who came for me this time. I didn't even touch her kid, yet she was still trying to extort me. I'm going to make sure her little schemes are the death of her. I sat at the wooden desk in my university dormitory room, watching the numbers climb on my laptop screen. The video Brenda had uploaded was a masterclass in manipulative editing. She had taken snippets from the commotion on the dirt shoulder of the mountain road, framing the camera angle so that my hand blocking Clara's arm looked like an aggressive, cold-hearted shove. The audio was filtered, muting Clara's loud declaration that the child had no pulse, and boosting Brenda's heartbroken, ragged wails. She won't let her help my baby. She's stopping her. The caption read, "Medical student refuses to save dying 4-year-old blocks. Emergency care for fun. My Skylar is dead." Within 3 hours, it had 2 million views. The comments were a bloodbath of internet justice. At Justice for Skylar. Name her. Dox her. She shouldn't be allowed near a hospital. At Real Doctor 99. If she's a medical student, her university needs to expel her immediately. She has no ethics. At User 48291. I found her school. It's St. Jude Medical College. Let's flood their dean's inbox. In my previous life, these exact words had paralyzed me with terror. I had spent days crying under my blanket, watching my parents' phone numbers get leaked to hate groups, watching strangers order hundreds of unpaid delivery pizzas to our front door, watching spray-painted slurs ruin our family's porch. I had been so drowned in guilt and fear that I had agreed to meet Brenda in private, falling straight into her extortion trap. This time, my pulse was steady. My heart wasn't racing. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had memorized over a year of torture. Clara. On the other end of the line, I heard heavy, hyperventilating sobs. Jace, is that you? Did you see the news? Oh God, Jace, they posted my face online too. People are calling my apartment. They're saying I killed her because my CPR technique was wrong. Clara, listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice cutting through her panic. Like a scalpel. Take a deep breath. Lock your doors, pull your curtains, and do not make a single public statement. Do not apologize. Do not reply to a single message. But they're saying. I know what they're saying, I interrupted smoothly. And I know who Brenda Vance really is. Did you record anything while you were on the bus? Clara sniffled, wiping her nose. No, I was too scared. But my dashcam. My car was parked right behind the bus at the scenic turnout when we stopped. Front camera records continuously to a cloud drive. A cold, sharp smile spread across my face. Your car was right behind the bus? Yes. I parked it there before getting on the shuttle, because the parking lot near the trail was full. Clara, I said, leaning closer to the microphone, you just saved us both. Download the raw, unedited footage with timestamps immediately. Put it on 3 separate flash drives, upload it to an encrypted drive, and send me the link. Don't show it to anyone else yet. Okay, I'm doing it right now. Jace, why are you so calm? Because I looked out my window at the gathering storm clouds over the campus. This time, the monsters aren't going to get away with it. After securing the dashcam footage from Clara, I didn't rush to post it online. Posting a video online during the peak of an outrage mob is useless. The internet hive mind doesn't want the truth when it's hungry for blood. It wants a villain. If I release the video now, Brenda's supporters would claim it was doctored, or they would twist another 5-second clip to fit their narrative. I needed an absolute, unassailable legal hammer. I called an old family friend, Uncle Marcus, who was a senior homicide detective in the city police department. In my last life, my father had been too proud to trouble Uncle Marcus until the harassment had already spiraled out of control. By then, the local precinct had been overwhelmed by public pressure and refused to open an official investigation into Brenda for extortion, treating it as a civil medical dispute. Jace, Uncle Marcus's deep voice boomed over the speaker. I just saw the news. Online. Your father called me from the countryside, worried sick about you. What on earth happened on that mountain road? Uncle Marcus, I said, setting my laptop down. I need you to open a formal case file immediately. Not for medical malpractice, for extortion, child endangerment, and suspected homicide. There was a long silence on the line. Homicide? Marcus asked, his tone instantly shifting from concerned family friend to veteran detective. Jace, the news says the kid had a congenital heart attack. The kid was already dead before Brenda ever stepped foot on that bus, I said, flatly. When Clara checked Skylar's pulse, the child's body temperature was already well below normal. The girl had petechial hemorrhages in her lower eyelids and early signs of livor mortis along her lower back. A child who Suffers an acute cardiac arrest on a bus, doesn't develop hypostasis in 5 minutes. As a top medical student, I had spent the last 6 months of my previous life studying every detail of pediatric pathology, trying to understand why my CPR had failed. I had reviewed the autopsy notes that had been buried in the court archives after my death. Are you telling me? Marcus whispered, his chair squeaking as he stood up. That woman carried a dead child onto a public shuttle? She carried a corpse onto a bus in a remote mountain area where there was no cell service and no immediate ambulance access, I explained coldly. She needed a public place with no medical equipment. She needed young, inexperienced medical students to touch the body so she could frame them, stage a dramatic scene for bystanders' cameras, and launch a public extortion campaign. Jesus Christ, Marcus breathed. Why would a mother do that to her own child? Because of 2 things, Uncle Marcus, I sneered. First, a $1.5 million child life insurance policy she took out on Skylar 4 months ago. And second, a man named Frank Vance. In my last life, I had been blind. But now, all the pieces were linking together. I need you to run a background check on Frank Vance and Brenda Vance. I continued. Check their bank accounts, their debt records, and specifically, check Frank Vance's medical history. Find out who in his circle suffered from end-stage corneal dystrophy. I'm on it, Marcus said, the sound of keys clacking rapidly in the background. Jace, stay in your dorm. Don't go out alone. The media is already gathering outside your campus gates. Let them gather. I smiled quietly. The higher they build her pedestal, the harder she's going to hit the ground. By the next morning, the campus of St. Jude Medical College was surrounded by news vans, reporters, and angry protesters carrying signs that read "Justice for Skylar" and "Expel the cold-blooded student." Brenda had organized a live-streamed press conference right outside the university gates. She stood in front of a bank of microphones, wearing a black dress, looking pale and gaunt, clutching a framed photograph of Skylar. Frank Vance stood beside her, acting the part of the grieving, stoic father, holding a box of tissues. All I wanted was for my baby to have a chance at life. Brenda sobbed into the microphones, her voice echoing through the crowd. That medical student, Jace Sterling, blocked the only girl who was willing to save my daughter. She stood there with her arms crossed, laughing at us. She told us my baby was already dead just so she wouldn't have to ruin her hands doing CPR. The reporters thrust their microphones forward frantically. Mrs. Vance, has the university reached out to offer a settlement? Mrs. Vance, are you filing a civil lawsuit against Jace Sterling? Frank Vance stepped up to the microphone, his face darkening. A settlement? Money won't bring our little angel back. But we are demanding $5 million in damages from the university and the Sterling family to establish a foundation in Skylar's name. If they refuse to pay by 4 o'clock today, we will camp outside this school forever. $5 million. In my last life, she had started at $70,000. Now, seeing how quickly the internet had taken her side, her greed had multiplied 100-fold. Inside the dean's office on the 3rd floor, Dean Thomas was pacing back and forth, wiping sweat from his forehead. Jace, Dean Thomas yelled, slamming his hand on his mahogany desk. Look at the mess outside. The board of trustees is calling me every 10 minutes. The university's reputation is being dragged through the dirt. Do you have any idea what this is doing to our admissions? I sat on the leather sofa in his office, sipping a cup of warm tea. Beside me sat Uncle Marcus, wearing his dark police trench coat, along with a team of 2 plainclothes officers. Dean Thomas, calm down, I said softly, setting my teacup on the saucer with a gentle clink. Calm down, the dean barked. I am suspending you indefinitely. We are issuing a public apology to Mrs. Vance within the hour. If you issue an apology to that murderer, Dean, Uncle Marcus spoke up, his voice heavy and commanding, you will be resigning in disgrace by tomorrow morning. Dean Thomas froze. Detective Marcus? What are you talking about? Uncle Marcus pulled a thick manila folder from his briefcase and slapped it onto the desk. At 6 a.m. today, under my orders, the state medical examiner executed an emergency search warrant at the Silverwood Funeral Home, where Brenda Vance was attempting to have her daughter's body cremated without an autopsy. Dean Thomas blinked, stunned. Cremated? Without an autopsy? The coroner completed the preliminary toxicological panel 2 hours ago. Marcus continued, opening the folder to reveal a series of high-resolution forensic photographs and lab charts. Skylar Vance did not die of a heart attack on that bus. I leaned forward, my eyes fixing on the dean. Skylar Vance died at approximately 4 a.m. on the morning of May 24th, 6 hours before the bus ever left the station. Cause of death: acute respiratory failure caused by a massive Lethal dose of pediatric sedatives and muscle relaxants. The dean's face turned as white as his crisp collar. As sedatives? Brenda Vance poisoned her own daughter in her sleep. I said every word, dripping with razor-sharp precision. She dressed the dead child in colorful clothes, put sunglasses on her face, carried her onto a crowded mountain bus, and waited until the bus reached a dead zone with no cell service to pretend the child had suddenly collapsed. My God! Dean Thomas sank into his chair, his hands shaking violently. She dragged a corpse onto a public bus just to frame a medical student. She didn't just want to frame a student. I smiled darkly, pulling out my phone. She wanted to create a high-profile, emotionally charged tragedy, so no one would question the cause of death when she claimed the $1.5 million child life insurance policy she bought 4 months ago. Uncle Marcus looked at his watch. It's 3:30 p.m. The press conference outside is reaching its peak. I stood up, adjusting the lapels of my white medical coat. Let's go down, I said softly. It's time to give Mrs. Vance her $5 million. The afternoon sun was blazing down on the grand marble steps of St. Jude Medical College. Hundreds of reporters, students, and live streamers were crammed behind the velvet ropes. Brenda was standing at the podium, wiping tears from her face, looking at her watch. It's almost 4 o'clock. Brenda shouted into the microphones, her voice filled with theatrical heartbreak. And the murderer, Jay Sterling, is still hiding inside. She hasn't even had the courage to look a grieving mother in the eye. The crowd began to chant. Come out. Apologize. Come out. Apologize. Right on cue, the heavy oak doors of the university main building swung open. A wave of camera flashes blinded the air. I walked down the marble steps slowly, unhurried, wearing my crisp white lab coat. Behind me walked Dean Thomas, Uncle Marcus, and 6 uniformed police officers. The crowd erupted into furious shouts. There she is. Monster. How can you wear that coat? Pay the family. Expel her. Brenda's eyes flashed with a triumphant, greedy spark. She quickly pulled Frank's arm and rushed toward the base of the steps, holding up her framed picture of Skylar. Jay Sterling. Brenda screamed, pointing a shaking finger at my face. You finally decided to show your cold, heartless face. Are you here to apologize for killing my daughter? I stopped on the middle landing of the staircase, looking down at her from a position of absolute height. The wind ruffled my hair, but my expression was as serene as a calm sea. Mrs. Vance, I said, my voice projected clearly through a lapel microphone, connected to the university's outdoor PA system. I am here to answer your demands. Frank Vance stepped forward, grinning like a shark. You better answer them. $5 million, or we tear this school down legally. $5 million is a lot of money, Mr. Vance, I said calmly. Especially for a couple who currently owes $800,000 to illegal underground gambling dens in the North District. Frank's grin instantly vanished. His face stiffened. What did you say? The crowd's shouting began to die down. Confused whispers rippled through the reporters. And it's a very specific amount, I continued, reaching into my coat and pulling out a wireless presentation remote. Considering that your primary goal was to cover the remaining balance on your $1.5 million child life insurance policy from Horizon Mutual. Brenda's face twitched. What nonsense are you talking about? I'm a grieving mother. How dare you slander my dead baby? Let's talk about your dead baby, Brenda, I said softly. I clicked the remote in my hand. Behind me, the massive digital billboard above the university entrance, usually used for graduation announcements, flickered and lit up. The crowd gasped. Displayed on the 50-foot screen was Clara's high-definition time-stamped dashcam video. It showed the scenic mountain turnout at 10:15 a.m. The footage was crystal clear. It showed Brenda stepping off the bus, holding Skylar over her shoulder. But what caught everyone's breath was the close-up zoom. Skylar's arm was hanging down, completely stiff and rigid. Her fingers were locked in an unnatural, claw-like position, classic rigor mortis. Her neck was fixed at an awkward, unnatural angle, showing deep purple blotches along her jawline. Liver mortis. A voice from the PA system echoed Clara's loud, unedited audio from the bus. She has no pulse. Her skin is freezing cold. She's been dead for hours. The reporters went wild. Cameras immediately pivoted from my face to the giant screen above. What is that? A reporter yelled. Look at the child's hand. That's rigor mortis. She was already dead before they got off the bus? Another shouted. Brenda's eyes bulged with terror. She lunged toward the steps, screaming frantically. Turn it off. Turn it off. That's fake. She doctored the video. My baby was alive. Do you want to see what else is doctored, Brenda? I asked quietly, clicking the remote again. The screen changed. This time, it was an official police forensic report stamped by the state coroner's office, alongside the toxicological blood chart. At 6 a.m. yesterday, I announced into the microphone, my voice ringing out across the square like a death knell. Skylar Vance was fed a lethal dose of liquid promethazine and zolpidem, strong pediatric sedatives. She stopped breathing in her sleep at approximately 4:12 a.m. in your apartment on Elm Street. The crowd went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop on the marble steps. You sat by her bed and watched her die. I stepped down one stair, staring straight into Brenda's soul. Then you dressed her corpse, put her in a child carrier, rode a public bus for 2 hours, and staged a fake medical collapse to pick a helpless student as your scapegoat. You wanted to trick the world into thinking a medical error caused her death, so the insurance company wouldn't investigate the toxicology. Liars. You're all liars. Brenda shrieked, her voice cracking into a terrifying, unhinged howl. She turned to Frank, grabbing his jacket violently. Frank, do something. Tell them she's lying. Frank, seeing the police officers descending the stairs, completely panicked. He shoved Brenda away from him so hard she tumbled onto the concrete. Don't touch me, you crazy bitch. It was her idea. Officer, it was all her. Poisoned the kid. She said we could get $5 million from the school and the insurance. I didn't feed her the drugs. Frank, you bastard. Brenda screamed, scrambling off the floor and digging her nails into Frank's face. You were in on it from the start. You needed the money for your eye surgery and your gambling debts. You helped me carry her onto the bus. The crowd watched in utter horror as the two monsters tore into each other right on the sidewalk, spitting, kicking, and exposing every dirty detail of their hideous crime in front of dozens of live news cameras. Uncle Marcus raised his hand. Officers, arrest them both for first-degree murder, insurance fraud, extortion, and desecration of a human corpse. 6 officers rushed forward, slamming Frank and Brenda onto the pavement, pulling their arms behind their backs and clicking the steel handcuffs into place. As Brenda was dragged toward the police cruiser, her face pressed flat against the hot hood of the car, her bloodshot eyes locked onto mine. Jace Sterling, she screamed, spit flying from her mouth. You witch. How did you know? How could you possibly know about the drugs and the time of death? You weren't even there. I walked down the final step, standing just inches from her ear. The crowd was dead quiet, watching us. I leaned down and whispered softly, so only she could hear. Because Brenda, in my last life, you used my father's donated corneas to pay off your debt. I died watching my parents jump from a roof because of you. Brenda's eyes widened into dinner plates. A look of supernatural, paralyzing horror washed over her face. Her jaw worked uselessly, but no sound came out. This time, I whispered with a cold, beautiful smile. You're going to rot in a dark cell for the rest of your life. And you will never see the sun again. The downfall of Brenda and Frank Vance was a national sensation, but the investigation was far from over. With Uncle Marcus leading the task force, the police conducted a deep tissue audit of Brenda's past. What they uncovered made the front page of every major newspaper in the country for weeks. Skylar hadn't been their first attempt at an insurance scam. 3 years earlier, Brenda's elderly mother had died under mysterious circumstances after falling down a flight of stairs, just 2 weeks after Brenda opened a $300,000 accidental death policy in her name. The money had been used to buy Frank's luxury sports car and pay off their initial gambling debts. When the money ran out, they turned their greedy eyes toward their own daughter. In the interrogation room, faced with overwhelming forensic evidence, dashcam footage, and Frank's immediate betrayal, Brenda broke down entirely. Confessed to everything, including her plan to murder Frank next once the $5 million university settlement cleared her bank account. Meanwhile, the police also raided a private, illegal medical clinic in the city's outskirts, the place where Brenda had arranged to sell stolen organs on the black market. It turned out Frank Vance didn't have an eye condition at all. The person who needed the corneal transplant in my previous life was Frank's underground loan shark, a ruthless gang leader named Victor, the Viper Chun, who had promised to wipe out Frank's $800,000 debt in exchange for a fresh, legal set of human corneas. In my past life, when my grief-stricken father committed suicide, Brenda had swooped in like a vulture, manipulating my naive, heartbroken self into agreeing to a rapid organ donation, which she then diverted to Chen's illegal surgeon for a massive finder's fee. This time, with Uncle Marcus's raid, Victor Chen's entire criminal network was exposed, leading to the arrest of 14 corrupt doctors, organ brokers, and gang members. The web of filth that had once crushed my family to death had been completely dismantled, root and branch. 2 weeks after the arrest, St. Jude Medical College held a special press conference Dean Thomas stood before a sea of reporters, his voice filled with pride and solemnity. We wish to issue a formal, public apology to our student Jace Sterling and her fellow student Clara Lynn, the dean announced. They acted with immense courage, sharp professional judgment, and absolute moral integrity under extreme pressure. The university is establishing a full 4-year medical scholarship in Jace Sterling's name to honor her dedication to truth and medical ethics. The applause in the auditorium was deafening. I stood on the stage beside Clara, wearing my white coat, accepting the honor. With a quiet, dignified bow, Clara wiped tears of relief from her eyes, squeezing my hand tightly. Jace, thank you. If you hadn't stopped me on that bus, if you hadn't guided me, my life would have been destroyed. You did the right thing, Clara, I whispered, smiling at her. Never let bad people make you afraid of being a good doctor. The summer sun was warm and gentle as I stepped off the train in my hometown. The quiet, tree-lined street looked exactly as it had in my fondest memories. There were no protesters, no spray-painted slurs on the fences, no cameras flashing in the dark. I walked up the stone pathway of my childhood home, my heart pounding with a sweet, aching anticipation. Before I could even knock, the front door swung open. My mother stood there in her floral kitchen apron, holding a wooden spatula, her hair dark and healthy, her eyes bright with unconditional love. Behind her, my father was sitting at the dining table, wearing his reading glasses, reading the morning paper, looking tall, strong, and unbent. Jace, my mother cried out, dropping the spatula and rushing forward to pull me into a tight, warm embrace. My sweet girl, you're finally home. I wrapped my arms around her neck, burying my face in her shoulder, smelling the familiar, comforting scent of fresh jasmine and home-cooked soup. Tears streamed down my face, not tears of bitterness, resentment, or grief, but deep, pure tears of joy. My father walked over, his broad hands resting gently on my shoulders, pulling us both into his strong arms. We saw the news, honey, my father said, his voice deep and rough with pride. You were so brave. You saved your friend, you saved your school, and you brought justice to that poor little girl. I didn't do it alone, Dad, I sobbed softly, holding onto his shirt. I did it because I have the best parents in the world. My mother wiped my tears with her thumb, smiling tenderly. Come on inside. I made your favorite braised pork ribs and sweet potato soup. Your father helped chop the vegetables. I walked into the bright, sunlit dining room. The table was set with 3 sets of bowls and chopsticks. The air was filled with the mouth-watering aroma of home. I sat down between my mother and father, watching them laugh, chatter, and pile food into my bowl until it was overflowing. I looked out the window at the clear, infinite blue sky. The nightmare of my past life was completely gone, burned away like morning mist. Under the rising sun, I had broken the chains of fate, protected the people I loved most, and reclaimed my future with my own hands. I took a sip of the warm soup, looked at my parents' happy, smiling faces, and smiled back. Life was just beginning.